Welcome, Bronco Nation. The football season is literally right around the corner. We are less than about 50 days away, especially by the time this video actually makes it out to you. Less than 50 days away from the start of the college football season. The long off season, the desert of the off season is almost over. We've almost made it to the oasis of the first kickoff of the season and everything else that has to come to follow. I love the off-season videos, getting to talk about some of the stuff that maybe I don't have time to focus on like I would during the football season, some of the conference realignment, making some of those Boise State highlight videos. But the reason I have this channel, the reason that I started in the first place is to talk about Boise State football, specifically the season. And so it is with great pleasure that I get to introduce the first of the Boise State 2026 football preview series. This is the special teams preview. And today I have Cooper Jones, Boise State punt returner from the 2024 Magical Fiesta Bowl season, CFP season, and I cannot wait to get into it. We're going to talk about Cooper's time at Boise State. We'll talk about some of the things, his journey to getting to the blue, and some of his family heritage there as well. And then we'll talk about this 2026 season from a special teams perspective. Cooper, it's awesome to have you on, man. This is great.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This is going to be a great conversation. Everybody, please, as we go throughout, let us know your thoughts on this video. Let us know your predictions and thoughts on the season. Like I said, we'll be having the offensive, defensive previews as well. I'll announce the guests of those shortly. Today, we're going to go through the 2026 season, looking ahead into that. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about Cooper's time at Boise State. He played at Boise State in 2024, but he had a long run up to that, kind of part of the new age of college football with the development, the transfer portal, and everything. He started off at the JUCO level, Butte College, where he played in 2019. And then he ended up going to Utah State for 4 years before eventually transferring for his last year to Boise State. And so we'll talk about all of that. It's going to be a great interview, great discussion. Again, everyone, please let us know your thoughts as we go along. Before we get any further into the video, I do want to shout out today's sponsor, Horseshoe Spirits. If you've not had a chance to try this, you definitely need to, obviously being 21 or older, but make sure that you grab a bottle of this. You can buy it at any liquor store in the south of Idaho. Should be all over Idaho now at this point. You can buy it at any liquor store in Idaho. If you cannot find it, let them know and they'll get it for you by name. Make sure you get these bottles. Fantastic way to support Boise State athletics because it goes and supports Boise State NL through the Horseshoe Collective. But they're also great on the shelf as well. It's not just a looking bottle, it's a drinking one as well. They have bourbon, compound, gin, vodka, rum. Fantastic options. If you don't live in the great state of Idaho, you can buy these online as well. I'll put a link to that in the description. For shipping online, if you buy 6 or more bottles, the shipping is free. Fantastic gift for your family or friends. So again, make sure 21 or older and legal within the state in which you are purchasing. All right, so Cooper, time prior to Boise State, started off at the JUCO level. There you had 11.4-yard average in punt returns. Then you started off at going to Utah State. It took a little while for you to kind of build up there at Utah State, but your last season right before your transfer to Boise State, you actually were second in the Mountain West in your punt return average, 32nd nationally overall with a 6.6-yard average. Ended up redshirting your senior season there in 2023 before transferring to Boise State, where you had a 5.56 average, which was 16th overall in the country, and you had a long of 22 versus Oregon, a long of 19 versus Penn State. So really turning it on for those big games. It's great to get to talk with you here. Great to talk with someone who's not just athlete at Boise State, but has really experienced that entire journey, starting off at the JUCO level, building your way up, and then transferring towards the end of your playing time to go and then make such a huge impact on a national level team there going to the CFP. So there's a lot that we can learn from you, and I'm excited to have this conversation. Let's just start off right at the beginning. Prior to getting into the collegiate level, early football journey, what inspired you and motivated you to pursue the sport of college football at such a high level?
Yeah, mostly just my family. Like my dad, he went and played Division I football at Sac State, became an All-American. I remember growing up watching his high school tapes and college tapes all the time. And then my uncle Tim, he ended up going to Boise State and watching his highlights growing up. I mean, so it's just in my blood, and that's just what I wanted to do from the time that I can remember. So.
Yeah, we'll talk about your Uncle Tim Gilligan, to those who may not be familiar with that last piece there. Obviously, famous wide receiver at Boise State. And he actually was able to come on the channel. We had a great conversation when Cooper joined the team. But before we kind of get into talking a little bit about that family legacy at Boise State, let's talk a little bit about that journey because you didn't start off going right up to FBS. You built your way up. You started the JUCO level there with Butte. And can you talk a little bit about what going to JUCO did for you to help grow your skills, not just at a personal physical level, but also as a leader and things that you carried on to the next levels on all the way up?
Yeah, when I first went to JUCO, I wasn't too happy about it. I just wanted to make that jump immediately, but I am so glad that I ended up going that route because coming from Elko, it's you don't really know what kind of football there is out there at the FBS level. It's hard, and even going from JUCO to Utah State, that was a huge jump. So having those experiences at my JUCO was really beneficial to me in my career.
Is there anybody that stood out during your time there that kind of mentored you and helped develop you into the player and person you would become?
Um, my head coach was awesome. His brother and my dad played college football together, so we kind of knew him, and
Oh,
he really took me under his wing. And then TJ Bass, he's actually playing for the Dallas Cowboys now. Um, just watching the way that he went about things and how he worked in the weight room and then in meetings as well, and how he carried himself on the field. That was that was awesome to be able to learn from him.
getting to learn from and watch those guys play and then also coaching you as well. Were there any habit patterns or changes in your style of play that you developed during their time there at JUCO?
Um, yeah. Like I said, playing in Elko, standing back there for a punt, guys are just, they're just kicking the ball. I didn't even know that they try to put spirals on it and they try to make them turn over and all that. So I pretty much had to relearn how to catch a punt
Hmm.
and just kind of, I don't know, just really figure out how I'm going to make an impact at this level. And
Hmm.
I kind of knew that returning was going to be my thing.
Well, talking about finding that niche that you were able to excel out, can you talk about how that opportunity to go to Utah State, how that came about? And then what were those biggest hurdles that you found going from the JUCO now to the FBS Division One level?
Yeah, I after the season, I had a meeting with my coach, and I told him that I'm ready to go. I want to chase my dream of going D1. I don't care if it's a walk on. I just give me an opportunity. And then that's where Coach Collins came in. He was at Utah State at the time. He ended up recruiting me. Him and Coach Miley recruited me to Utah State. Got me out there, and yeah, I remember the first week there, it was rough. I didn't know if I could handle it physically, but you that's kind of the threshold there. You figure out if you can do it within the first 2 weeks you're there physically, and then everything after that, it's all mental. So just really getting through those first 2 weeks was very, very important for me.
What ended up being the biggest adjustment, either in your habit patterns or your mentality or your approach? You talk about going from the high school to the JUCO level and having to learn how to catch a football again. And I'm assuming that didn't have to happen, but now coming up to the FBS level, was there anything that you changed as far as the priorities that you had in your life, as far as how you approached the gym, the weight room, how you approached the practice field? Were there any major shifts that occurred going from that JUCO to FBS level just so that you could stay and compete?
Yeah, I think the main thing is just how I took care of my body, whether it be sleep or hydration. Um, I remember on hard conditioning days, you can really feel when you're not hydrated enough. So that's something that I really stressed on myself was getting enough fluids in me, just so I can perform at my best and have more stamina. Because I already knew that I was at a disadvantage being small. Like I had to really turn some heads. So I just had to make sure that I was at the top of my game at all times.
Is there any advice you would give to players in a similar situation, right, where they're at the high school level, they want to go play, and they want to find that Division One level? It's such a tiny percentage of players that do make that jump from the high school to the FBS level. Can you talk about some advice you would give to your younger self or to maybe younger players in a similar situation finding their way up now?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just really understanding the game. Like you can be the most talented player in the world, but if you don't know where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be there, you're not going to get on the field. So, especially coming from a small town, if you can try to give yourself that advantage of knowing the game inside and out, studying film, and then just really trying to push your mental game. That's the biggest thing, whether it be your confidence or whether you're doing something hard and you might think that you can't do it, but your mind will take you a lot of places.
Well, all of that ended up taking you through from Utah State up to Boise State. But before we talk about transferring up to Boise State, I do want to talk about one unique experience that you had there, and that was playing during COVID. All right, so 2020, it's their first year at Utah State. It's during the COVID year, the empty stadiums. Haven't had an opportunity to talk with a lot of players that played during that time. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like? You'd played at the JUCO level, and then you come up to the FBS, and now, boom, COVID season and the weirdness of that. Can you talk about what that was like? Kind of a little unique snapshot in American history.
Yeah, yeah. I got to Utah State in January of 2020. Um, and then it hit a few months later. So I really didn't get a taste of what college football was like until later that year.
Mm.
Um, and just being there, it was a blessing in disguise
Mm.
because some of my teammates at JUCO, they ended up having to stay there for 3 years. And it was just really hard for them to get out. So I got out at the right time. But then yeah, it was weird. Feels like a fever dream now. But yeah, it was, I mean, it was just week by week, day by day. You didn't know who was going to show up that day. Some guys might have tested positive. You wouldn't see them for 2 weeks. Then all of a sudden they're back practicing like nothing happened. And then I finally made the travel squad in our last away game. And then the game got shut down. So I was super bummed about that. But yeah, it was a time for sure.
So
Yeah.
transferring to Boise State, can we talk a little bit about what led to that decision? And then, obviously redshirting your senior year, I assume that was to kind of help out with, can you talk a little bit about the decision to redshirt your senior year there? And then ultimately what led to your decision to come to Boise State?
Yeah. So like you said, that year before, I started at punt returner every game. And then the next year, we brought in a transfer from Air Force, I believe. And he ended up getting the spot. So I told myself I had one more year eligibility. So I'm going to use this year to redshirt. Kind of awkward, being a senior, going from a starter, and then, your senior year, you're redshirting. So it was a little weird. But then, yeah, I mean, my coaches and my teammates knew that I was hitting the portal after that year. Still had a great time. I mean, I made some lifelong friends at Utah State. I love that place. Um, and then, yeah, I hit the portal. Um, Last game ever at Utah State, actually, I played in Bronco Stadium. So
Wow.
we played at the Potato Bowl. Um, but then, yeah, hit the portal. Um, I had my son, so I didn't even really think that I was going to play again.
Hmm.
I was like, this might be time to hang it up, but I'll keep my phone on in case anyone calls. And then that's when Coach Collins got brought to Boise State, or it could have been the year before. But I hit him up and I'm like, "You need a punt returner?" And he, he actually called me and he's like, "Yeah, we actually do. We want you to come out and visit." And ended up giving me Coach Miller's number and developed a really good relationship with him. And it was pretty much Boise State or hang them up for me.
Wow.
And it ended up being a full circle moment and ended up getting the opportunity to get out there.
You talk about your uncle and that being one of the inspirations for you playing. Did you ever imagine when you started this journey, or especially when you've been at Utah State for 2 or 3 years, that you were going to end up playing where your, family made such a huge impact?
Yeah, so growing up, I was Boise State's number one fan. I mean, I watched that 2003 highlight tape every single day for years. It's got some hours on it. But yeah, that was my dream school. Going to Boise State, tried to out of high school. That's when Benton Wickersham was up there. So I did have contacts, but I was not ready for that. And then went to JUCO. Coach Snelling, the head coach at Butte, he actually played for Boise State. So it's kind of all setting up. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go to JUCO and then I'm going to, get my shot at Boise. That didn't end up happening. They didn't recruit me. So I was kind of upset about it. And then Utah State came along. I was like, yep, same conference. I'm going to get to see those guys every year. So after that, Boise State became enemy number one for me. And I tried so hard to hate them. I tried. And then hit the portal. And like I said, it was a full circle moment and ended up being back to big Boise State guy.
Well, I love that you mentioned that 2003 highlight DVD, man, because I'm actually in the middle of my annual rewatch. I watch every single Boise State highlight DVD that they made. And then if you anybody interested, because like no views, I really made them for myself. But anybody interested, I actually continued those highlights after they stopped making highlight DVDs. So you can watch the 2013 all the way up through 2025 football seasons game by game on my channel. But every year I sit down and I watch every single video. And I'm actually just finishing up. I'm on the 2006 Fiesta Bowl now, but I just finished up the 2003 highlight DVD. So, no,
That's
incredible
awesome.
times, incredible moments. And then finding yourself now at Boise State. Like you said, wanted to go, it didn't end up working out initially. And then it's just funny
Mhm.
how it all ends up falling together here at the end. Your last year, you're at Boise State. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like coming onto the blue? Knowing you are now playing at a place that you've been a fan of, place that you'd watched over and over and over again, what that felt like. Was that a surreal moment for you to step out in the blue that first time in pads or practice or whatever it was?
Yeah, no, the moment that I got there um, for summer weights and I saw my locker, I was like, wow, this is crazy. Just stepping into the locker room. I mean, it was truly a dream come true. It was a special feeling.
Was there the weight of the family legacy? I mean, you weren't just going to a place where your uncle had played, and he wasn't just some random guy, right? I mean, Tim Gilligan is one of the best wide receivers in Boise State history, certainly in the top 10, potentially in that top five conversation. He's one of the best wide receivers. He just wasn't just a wide receiver. He was also one of our best returners ever in school history as well. And you were coming in and literally stepping into his cleats in that role. Was there any pressure just knowing what he'd done and what you were coming in to do?
Um, you know, I really tried hard not to let that affect me. I mean, obviously, it was a big motivation for me, trying to carry on not only his legacy, but my dad's as well. My dad is really the one who started it. And um, the no fair catch thing, that was my dad
Halo
was,
rule.
I've seen that video of him getting hit a lot. So, yeah, I really did want to carry that on. I didn't want to put that pressure on myself because there's already pressure enough trying to catch a punt in front of a lot of people. But no, yeah, I did try to carry that on. I had to realize that the game is a lot different nowadays, though. Um, I respect the no fair catch thing, um, and I tried my best at it. But I mean, just the way that these punters punt the ball now, there a lot of it's just hang time. Just the game's evolving, so it was hard to really truly carry that on, but I tried my best.
Well, and that's something when we get into the 2026 preview that we'll talk about because it's a conversation I've had with former players as well, is that the game is changing and developing, and that impacts the potential and impact of some of these areas of the special teams unit. So we'll kind of hold on to that one and come back to it. But talking about wanting to establish your own legacy, wanting to establish your impact, you certainly did that. In 2024, Boise State ended up having a historic season, one of only four seasons. You're part of one of only four classes to make it to that ultimate goal, the CFP, or previous to that, the Fiesta Bowl. But you're one of four Fiesta Bowl classes. And so you did end up establishing your own legacy. Can you talk? We'll talk a little bit about that 2024 team coming from the JUCO level and then Utah State, fellow conference foe, over to Boise State. Can you talk about what was different about the Boise State team culture mentality? Because, and it's not to put down another program, but obviously Boise State made it to the Fiesta Bowl and Utah State didn't. So can you talk a little bit about what was special about that 2024 team and then just the culture and mentality at Boise State compared to maybe some other places that you'd played at previously?
Yeah, yeah, I've been a part of dang near every type of team. I high school we were pretty average. Went to JUCO, really good. First year at Utah State, we won one game. Next year, win the Mountain West, and then after that, win 7 or 8 games. So I've experienced the highs and the lows, and Boise State is just, I mean, you just feel it there, the culture, that blue collar mentality. I don't know if it was different for me just because I grew up knowing what Boise State was about and knowing what type of program that is, um, and what to do to kind of uphold that standard. Um, but man, when you get there, I mean, every single player holds each other accountable, and the coaches, they're there. They more just guide you in the right direction, because good teams are coaches led and great teams are player led, and that's something that 2024 team, we had some really good leadership with Ashton and Tubes. I mean, those guys were really solid.
Obviously, that program in 2024 had such a strong and unique bond, especially coming through 2023. Was it difficult at all for you to establish yourself, your role, and then also, kind of conglomerating into that very tight-knit family?
Yeah, it's anytime you go somewhere new, you got to prove yourself, and I I just fell into the habit of proving myself every single day just because being undersized, like I just can't let anything slip. So um, yeah, it was tough. I grew pretty comfortable at Utah State and made some really good friends. So it was hard to leave all those guys and then come into a completely new situation. Um, didn't even know that I was going to get the job. All I knew is this was my last year, and I might spend it on the field, might spend it on the sideline. So I was just really trying to get on the field any way that I could. So
Well, you get on the field, you did, and you ended up making a big impact. Can you talk a little bit about when you personally knew that that season was going to not just be good, but special, end in something that very few teams, especially the G6 level, get an opportunity to go out and achieve? When did you sense that that was going? Was it right from the very beginning, or was it a little bit further on the year? When did you know, hey, this is not just your average, Boise State even season?
yeah, as soon as I got there, I knew that it was a special group. Just the way that they attacked, um, weights and running out on the blue, running the decks. The decks were the hardest conditioning that I've ever done in my life, by the way. That was horrible. I will never ever run another deck. But no, I could tell just by the leadership with Ashton and Tubes, um, Latrell, Caples in the wide receiver room. I mean, the way those guys attacked every day, um, in every aspect, weights, film, training room. They were always in there taking care of their bodies, getting right. So from then I was like, okay, we're gonna be pretty good this year, but you don't really realize, at least not me. It didn't really hit me until we were all there in the team room and it got announced that we were going to the Fiesta Bowl. And I was like, wow, this is real right now. Or when we were all watching Ashton at the Heisman ceremony. That was really, really cool moment.
Greatest absolute fraud CF Heisman voting pull over in college football history. The people's
100%.
Heisman 100% deserved. Either way, though, since you've mentioned him a few times already, what was it like playing with Ashton Jeanty? I know we're talking about your experience at Boise State, but obviously he's someone that stands out quite a bit. So what was it like just watching how he prepared and getting to play with someone who obviously has left his mark so strongly on the program?
Yeah, it started off in the summer. Um, how he carried himself, just how personable he was too. I mean, he's a really great guy. He's really cool to be around, super humble. I mean, he's awesome. Um, but seeing him in the weight room when we were squatting and he puts on 625 and the bar's like bouncing and bending, I was like, oh man, this guy is different. And then first game of the season down at Georgia Southern, his first touchdown of the year. Um, I think he broke like 5 or 6 tackles. I mean, it was the best run that I've ever seen in my life. And I'm standing next to Troy Wilkie and Ben Ford on the sideline, and my jaw's just on the floor. I'm like, that was insane. Like, what? And they both look at me and they're like, you haven't seen anything yet. And in the moment, I was like, yeah, right. That was the best run that I've ever seen. Like, yeah, right. And they were 100% right. I had not seen nothing yet because every single run after that for the rest of the season was better. I mean, that was once in a generation player, and I'm really glad that I got to see that in person and be his teammate.
Was there, you talk about that Georgia Southern game, and obviously team had to rally and come back and get that win. And then next week, Oregon didn't win, but also, I mean, if you can pull anything from a loss, I mean, that was one of those ones. It was like, hey, we're at a higher level maybe than we thought we were.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about just the kind of how the season went along? Was there a game or a series of games or moments where you felt the team had to rally and power through some adversity that ended up shaping and building where that season went?
Yeah, I think that first game's a great example. We start out pretty good, but then I mean, it ended up only being a one possession game at one point. I think that said a lot, and that kind of set the tone of like, okay, we can't just win. Like we need to put the nail in the coffin here. We can't let teams hang around. Um, and then yeah, that Oregon game, we should have won it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was tough. I mean, I think a lot of teams, just for me playing at Utah State, we went and played Alabama. We got our butts whooped.
Yeah, I watched that game.
And after that game, it was like no one was really upset. It's like, yeah,
Hmm.
we just played Alabama. That was cool. I'm over here like, we just got beat 55-0. Like, yeah, like I get it. We're probably not gonna win, but why would you go into a game thinking like that?
Hmm.
But then after the Oregon game, like we were all pretty pissed off because we should have won that game. So seeing that kind of mentality was a really good sign, I think. And then the last one was against UNR, where my
Hmm.
brother's at now. So that's a little family rivalry we got going. Um, but yeah, I mean, UNR is always different. That rivalry game. It's always pretty close for the most part, but man, that was one of the games that we were not really on. That was a battle for sure, and we ended up pulling it out. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
a tough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's UNR games, you never know how those are going to go because there is a lot of bitterness there and we're their Super Bowl every year. So, but
Mhm.
your brother doesn't get to play us anymore, so it's too bad.
Yeah,
Uh
that's pretty disappointing. That's disappointing.
Well, it wasn't a magical season, and you already talked about sitting in that room, hearing Boise State's name called to go and play, not just at the CFP, but at a place that is the home away from home. I mean, it's the mecca of Boise State football. That is the place that we have all of our. I mean, maybe there's some other games that stand out, but all of our best and favorite moments where Boise State built their brand, the Fiesta Bowl. You kind of already mentioned it already, but just what was the air, the environment in that room as the team sat and heard their name announced to a place that has such a historical significance, Boise State.
Yeah, that was pretty special. Felt like Christmas, really. We went in there. I think it was Sunday morning, and we're all just hanging out, having some food. There's tons of cameras around everywhere. We're all just in a great mood, hanging out, and then it kind of gets down to it, and they show the reporter that's right outside our room on ESPN. He's talking about us, and yeah, when they announced it that we were going to the Fiesta Bowl, that was awesome. That was pretty cool.
Now, obviously, that was after your uncle's time there at Boise State, but he helped build those teams that went, and you talk about being a fan. So I'm sure you were watching in 2006 or
Oh yeah.
they and later on when they played in 2009 again and then also 2014. But getting to actually not just hear, but walk out onto that field with, Cardinal Stadium all around you, and there you are in the Fiesta Bowl. Can you talk a little bit about what that moment felt like? Culmination, 6 years, JUCO, Utah State, Boise State, and now you're standing there. When you thought about hanging up the cleats and just going and being a dad, not just being a dad, I've got 3 kids. I know that's a work in itself, but you thought about giving up football at one point, and now here you are standing at the place that is the location where fans associate the history of Boise State with. Can you talk about what that was like, just standing there on that field?
Yeah, we got to go see the field. I think the day before the game. Um, so yeah, walking down that tunnel. I mean, I remember that Fiesta Bowl, like every single thing that happened. I remember showing them in the tunnel, and I was like, "Wow, I'm here right now." And then I went to where they ran the Statue of Liberty, where Ian Johnson threw the ball into the crowd, and I went and stood right there, and I was just like, "Wow, this is where it happened right here. Like there's some history." So it was really cool to realize like, wow, I'm a part of this.
Now you talk about remembering every single moment all the way through. Obviously, you talk about Oregon being a game that Boise State should have won. I really feel like Boise State, and I talked to Tubner a little bit about this as well when he was on, but I just feel like Boise State got put in a tough spot with that bye. Do you feel like that had an impact on kind of just a little bit of the rust and which team was a little bit more in the groove earlier on? Not to make excuses, obviously, right? You play with what you got and you want to win, but do you feel like that had an impact on the end result of that match?
Yeah, 100%. It was nice getting that bye, just seeing that you're the number 3 seed in the college football playoff. Like that's awesome, but I think teams are really put at a disadvantage if they get that bye week because like them championship games and conference championship games, like that's when the team's at its peak, and you just want to keep that rolling, keep that momentum moving. But on a bye week, you can't really do that. So you're just kind of sitting around waiting, and then you watch these other games, so who you're going to play. And yeah, I think that teams are really put at a disadvantage having that bye week.
Well, obviously, game didn't end as you would have wanted it to, but just making that moment and being part of, Boise State 2014 CFP or the New Year's Six, a group of six, group of five bid gets added. Boise State's the first team on the docket that year. Been a little bit of a, sabbatical there, but then 2024, first year of the expanded playoff, Boise State's that first team again. And so just making that was a huge impact on the program, obviously, and certainly in terms of national legacy. But can you talk just finally before we go and actually do the meat of this video, looking at 2026? Can you talk a little bit about what it means for you looking back on your time at Boise State and getting to have been part of such a historic legacy and pushing your family's legacy forward? Can you talk a bit about what that meant for you looking back in your time at Boise State?
Yeah, dream come true. Truly, truly a dream come true. I mean, I always did want to be an NFL player, but my true dream was to play for Boise State, truly. And so to be able to live that out it was amazing. And especially having my son there with me. I mean, obviously he was too young to remember anything, but later on down the road, I can show him like, Dad did this while you were here.
Yeah.
And maybe start that dream for him and whatever he ends up wanting to do, but just showing him that dad can do hard things, so can you.
Yeah, get that third generation at Boise State. I love it. We'll
Yeah.
we'll look forward to that in 18 or 15 years from now. All
Yeah.
right, well, 2026. Let's move forward. Thank you so much for that conversation, discussion. Getting to look back on again a unique microcosm in college football with the COVID year and also just the transfer portal and how that kind of journey led and built you and so many other players are experiencing now and ultimately Boise State. Fantastic conversation. But let's switch gears a little bit, looking ahead into 2026. All right, so 2026 for Boise State. There's a lot of questions obviously circling around the team. And 2025 wasn't the year that Boise State wanted, especially following 2024 with that 9-5. But I will say that when it comes to units, I think defense and offense has more questions than I have for the special teams. I thought special teams maybe didn't start off as strong, but really improved as the year went on. And we'll look at some of those statistics specifically. But can you talk a little bit about what the special teams culture is at Boise State? How much of a focus is that as far as what the team emphasizes, what it focuses on in practice, kind of just the conversation and mentality around that unit? What can you
Mhm.
talk about as far as what that culture is like at Boise State?
Yeah, Coach Collins, he's a great coach, and he brings a great mentality with him. How he approaches every single day. He's the special teams coordinator, but he also helps coach the linebackers as well. So he's got a lot on his plate. Um, so he needs some guys in the special teams to step up and be leaders and help, not necessarily run things, but uphold the standard. Boise State is a program that 9-5 season, that's not acceptable. That's losing one game. It is like that's kind of okay, not really. We don't lose 2 games a year. And that's the standard that needs to be brought back to Boise State, I think. Or just that mentality. Um, but yeah, special teams. Um, I think that our kickoff and punt units, I think that they've been doing a great job. The way that Collins schemes those up, the way that those players buy in for those units, I think it's great. Our kickoff team, they fly down there. Our punt team, they fly down there. It's a really, really good unit. Um, I think our return games need some improvement, but like we were saying earlier, that's part of the game evolving. A lot of it is analytics now. Like a lot of coaches dive into that, which is great. Um, Being a returner, I do have a little bit of bias. I wish that we would set up more returns. Uh, but yeah, I mean, that's how it was when I was there. Coach Collins watches a ton of film, has been coaching for a long time. And if he sees, something open to where we can go try to block a punt, then that's what he's going to do. Which again, I wish it was the opposite. But I think just trusting in his process and having a true buy-in of all 4 units is very, very important for special teams as a whole to be successful.
Yeah, and 2025, you talk about not meeting the standard necessarily as a team, and special teams is one of those where it's kind of tough to analyze because when you look at the overall statistics, it wasn't that great, but they also improved really, really well towards the back end of the year. Kind of similar in 2024 as well, right? Like if you look at the overall statistics when it comes to, kick return, punt return coverage, it's not so great in that front end. Talked about Oregon game, obviously that was a factor. But then towards the back end, much better improvement, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to throw out some statistics here so we can kind of base this discussion on the facts. But 2025 for kick return, their coverage overall was 122nd in the country, which was a step back from 2024 when they were 98th. And they averaged allowing over 25 yards per return and a touchdown. But in the last 7 games, for 5 out of the last 7 games, they allowed a long of 22 or less and only one return of greater than 25 yards. And that was versus Oregon State.
Uh-huh.
For punt return coverage, they were 47th in the country, which was actually a big step up. The year previous, they'd been 123rd. They allowed an average only 6.85 yards, no touchdowns, and the back end of the season, again, much better than the front end. Now, you kind of mentioned already, but kick returns, punt returns, that is an area that they really did struggle in. Starting off from 2024, when you were assisting in that unit, they were 33rd overall in the country in kick returns, whereas last year they dropped to 93rd, went from averaging over 20 yards per return to under 20 yards per return. And then for punt returns as well, they were 111th overall with a 5.21 yard average and only a long of 17. So those units certainly an area where we'll talk about it here in a moment, how that may be a factor for Boise State to maybe get a chance to improve. When it came to
Mm-hmm.
kicking and punting, those areas obviously is so tough. You got to work with 2 of the greatest of all time to do the position at Boise State. Obviously, Jonah Domas, statistically the greatest kicker in Boise State history, and then James Ferguson Reynolds, who cemented himself also in those annuals of Boise State. Coming in, Colton Boomer, former player at UCF, coming into Boise State, struggled a little bit, 11 15th, 91st overall in the country with 73%. But he was 6 of 7 in the last 4 games, including 2 season longs of 50 and 52 to end the year. And then for punting, Oscar Doyle. Obviously, if you're going to look at one shining light in the entire unit, Oscar Doyle coming in there. 40.20 average, only about 3 yards less than what he was doing at a lower divisional level. 51st overall in the country. I thought Oscar Goodell did a great job stepping in there and replacing JFR. But overall, special teams for me is one of those units that 70% of the year I was really down on. And then that last, they right around the time when Boise State had those back-to-back losses and the team kind of refocused a little bit, special teams I feel like is one of those units where, Stacy Collins stepped up in the coaching, players stepped up around. And those last 4 out of the 6 games in my game reviews, I actually gave them an A or higher, A minus or higher review for total for those last 4 or 6 games. So I thought that there was a point there where Boise State was headed in a very negative direction for special teams, and towards the end of the year, they kind of put it together and started moving in a more positive direction. Obviously, again, 2024 was very similar in that kind of flow. And the
Hmm.
thing we want to find, or Boise State wants to find, is how can they start off at a higher level, not have to take a few games or half a season to fix what needs to be fixed. So, can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about, from your own experience in 2024, what do you think the team could have done or changed earlier on in the year to come in at a more high performing level, not have Oregon game type moments, versus having
Mhm.
to learn those lessons as the year went on? Or maybe a better way to phrase this is, what are some of those lessons the special teams unit learned as the year progressed? And what did you guys do, you as a team, do to implement changes that ended up having a positive effect?
Hmm. Yeah. I remember we ended up having a players only meeting, and it was pretty much for special teams. And I think it was after the Oregon game. Um, and guys like Tubes, Ashton, Ty Benefield, they stepped up and set that standard. Like, this is done. This is not what Boise State's about, because a touchdown, it's one guy not doing his job,
Mm,
one guy not giving 100% effort.
mm,
And guys see that crease, and, you don't do your 111th, it hurts the whole team.
mm.
So I just really think that they need to set the standard from the get. Someone needs to step up. I know guys like Travis Anderson. Um, when I was there, he was a young guy, but I think that he's kind of starting to step into the role of defense a little bit. I know he's a big player on special teams for him. Bowen Phelps, he seems to have stepped up. Him and JV stepped up as leaders on defense. Um, I think it's just guys like that that need to set the standard.
Yeah, and we talk about setting that standard and the kind of players that end up on these units.
Mhm.
What I guess a question I have for you is, what kind of players do end up on these units? Because back in like the Chris Peterson era, it was a huge talking point about like, hey, special teams is something that you earn your way onto, right? I think I'm not necessarily a dig at Utah State or any other program, but I know a lot of other teams, when it comes to special teams, those are kind of the guys that aren't the starters, right? It's like your opportunity to earn your way into the team. Whereas for
Mhm.
Boise State, for a long time there, you had Austin Pez and Titus Young. You had Ian Johnson blocking punts. I mean, and then on the kick return side, you had Doug Martin, your leading running back. You had Titus Young, your leading wide receiver, returning these things. And even more recently, your leading defender in Avery Williams, Khalil Shakir, these guys
Yep.
on these units. So
Mhm.
does Boise State still have that mentality that special teams is a reward for effort? That's something you earn your way on.
Mhm.
And then ultimately, what are the kind of guys that end up on these coverage units and return units?
Yeah, you're 100% right. Your kickoff team is your guys that are your dogs. They ain't afraid to hit. They're gonna fly down there and make something happen. Um, I think a big thing is um, being team guys, and that's what Boise State's been built on. We haven't ever gotten the biggest recruits. I mean, I know it's changing now. We are getting some pretty dang big recruits, but what Boise State was built on was true camaraderie and being team guys. And that's what special teams is about. So, guys that are maybe second on the depth chart, or, like my mentality, exactly what you were talking about, guys like Avery Williams and Shakir, they were back there returning punts, but my mentality was like, no, that's my spot. I don't want I don't want these guys taking that when they're already getting the ball in their hands. And
Hmm.
we need them a lot more on offense than we do for returning a kick. So let me be that guy, and I will step into those shoes. And that's a big thing with punt returning is you can be the best player, but if you're scared to catch that ball while guys are running down there, you shouldn't be out there. And I think that we need to find a guy that has that mentality. So,
Can you talk a little bit, because we'll talk about here, kick return, punt return, who steps up. Can you talk a little
mhm.
bit about the mentality it takes to be a punt returner? I've heard in the past you got to be a little crazy to be a returner. Like, you talk a little bit about that, that mentality, that scattaboo energy you got to have to be a punt returner or kick returner in college football.
Yeah, yeah. Especially with the way that the game's evolving now.
Mm.
I mean, my uncle helped out with the Halo rule, like that's great. Um, but back then it was really just like a couple of guys, one or two guys getting free.
Mm,
Punters would outkick their coverage a lot. Now, like I said earlier, these punters are sky punting it.
mm,
They're putting it right on the sideline. So it really makes it hard for a returner. But step one is catch the ball. And that was engraved into my mind. If you touch it, you catch it. And
mm,
if there is a slight chance that you can catch the ball, you go get it. You do not let it bounce because then that's giving up yards. You're not doing your job for the team. I
mm,
knew that that was my way of getting to get on the field in college football was returning. So I was doing everything in my power. If I wasn't going to return it, I'm going to save us 20, 25 yards in field position.
mm.
I'll dive for the ball if I have to. Or if we need something, it happened to me in JUCO. I didn't call a fair catch and I got smoked. But it kind of lights that fire. Like, yeah, you do kind of have to be a little crazy because you got to be willing to and accept that you're probably going to get hit
Mm,
hard a couple times doing this. But, I think that's a big thing of setting the standard for special teams. Is like this guy is putting everything he has on the line for you guys. Like I think that's what's unique about punt returning is I think that's the only position where you have to trust the other team.
mm.
You have to trust the other guys running down there to kill you. That while you're standing there waiting for a punt, that he's not just going to smoke you like they did to my uncle.
Right.
If you can't accept that, then you're not going to be a very good punt returner.
Mm,
So step one
mm.
is always to catch the ball. Always.
Yeah, well, Boise State's going to have to find a new guy to do that because Malik Sherrod, who was the only punt returner and kick returner for Boise State last year, very, very unique position because
Mm-hmm.
typically, and even with you taking that primary role, Capel still returned like 8 punts. So, Boise State has typically going way back. I mean, if you look at like the 2009, 2010 seasons, there was like 9 different players that touched that ball. And even in 2024, you guys had 6 players that returned kicks at some point, not counting guys that just caught like, a short lob or something like that or an
Mm-hmm.
onside kick. And so traditionally,
Mm-hmm.
Boise State's always gone with that multiple option. Maybe not so much at punt return, but especially at kick return. Whereas in 2025, went the opposite direction with just one player at both positions. Looking
Mm-hmm.
forward into this year, who is going to potentially step up? Because we've got to find a new guy at kick returner and punt returner with Malik Sherrod gone. What was interesting last year, and I kind of want your thoughts on this because you got to play with him in that role, was I think we all expected to see Dylan Riley returning as a kick returner because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there was a couple, drop balls here and there, and Stacey Collins has even talked about that. But overall, I mean, like when you talk about dynamic, explosive dudes, right? I mean, that was a guy that really stepped in that role. And I'm not sure if it was the thought process of, Sour Gaines is already hurt, Dubar is already hurt. Now we're down to our, third back in this situation. We don't want to risk injury, but I don't know. That was a guy that I really thought was going to have an impact, and he didn't end up playing in that position last year. Is he somebody you expect might come back? And obviously, no insider knowledge necessary, but do you think that's somebody who might come back as a kick returner? And what was it like working with him in that role?
Yeah, that guy is explosive. He's fast. Um, I remember seeing him during fall camp, and he got only like 2 reps, and one of them he just completely outran everybody, and we were standing there like, wow, like all right, like this kid's got something. And then he ends up returning one for a touchdown that year. But yeah, I would like to see him step back into that role, especially getting a touchdown that early in your career. That just builds your confidence up so much and kind of just I don't know. It just helps out for the rest of your career because you're like, well, I've already done it once. I can go do it again. And him being that explosive, I think it's important for him to be back there. Maybe even Cam Bates. I know he's
Mm.
very explosive, and when I was there, he was a freshman. They tried a little bit, but um, yeah, I don't know. They'll have some choices between him and Dylan. Um, I kind of hope to see that Rayshawn Jones.
Yeah.
He's one that's kind of stuck out to me this spring. I've been
Yes.
hearing his name a lot and seeing some videos of him, and that kid's a baller too. I don't know how Boise State does it. They always get these 17-year-old kids that are like, yeah, they can get on the field right now.
The Ashton
That's
Genties, the
awesome.
Sire Gaines. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
find those diamonds and roughs that no one's looking for. Yeah, I had Rashawn Jones here down as well. I think the coach has been talking him up, right? There's a role
mhm,
for him on this team. I think you're probably going to see him on offense as well, but it's a pretty deep wide receiver room if it's untested. I mean, there's a lot of, pretty decent high profile transfers coming over with experience that are a little bit bigger, a little bit older. So maybe finding himself some confidence in the return game is a way of working him in and then getting him on the field in the receiving role. That'd be fantastic to see. I think it's one of those questions that will just have to be answered over fall camp. You mentioned Cam Bates already. He had a couple of nice returns for us, along with 33 in 2024. So he got on the field a few times. Quentin Brown is another guy that I would like to see,
yes,
especially when you talk
yeah,
about that like mentality of I don't care, I'm making this play. That touchdown
yes,
he had last year where he got
yes,
up with the broken visor and the bloodied face afterwards,
yes,
that to me screams throw him out on a punt return. I don't know. That's
yes.
just maybe that's just me, but
I completely agree. I want to see him get a shot back there
so
for sure.
fast too. I mean, you watch his high
Hmm.
school tape, and even just last year, and he had that deep touchdown versus Utah State there at the end of the year.
Hmm.
Sorry, so and there's a couple other guys. Terry's Favors, he's another dude coming in that kind of played that multi-positional look. I think he played DB and wide receiver. He's really, really shifty dude. Probably not going to come in as a wide receiver and play right away, but maybe there's an opportunity for him in the return game.
Yep.
I know Sports Illustrated thought Jaden Mickey might have a role. I mean, we have had defenders in the past. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, last one, well, I know there's been some before, but Chris Carr did it.
Yeah,
He was really good at it.
yeah.
But
Kyle
yeah,
Wilson. Yeah, Kyle
yep.
Wilson was a big one. Avery Williams, obviously,
Avery
recently.
Williams.
So
Hmm.
I mean, those guys, if they've got the speed, and they do say there's a reason you're playing defense versus offense, but returning is a little bit different than trying to catch a wide, pass on the boundary. So I
Yeah.
don't know, man. It's going to be one of those. If I had to guess, just kind of throwing out my analysis right here, I'd have to say I think probably kick return. You're looking at probably Cam Bates and Dylan Riley returning that role, right? You got Sire Gaines back fully healthy, hopefully this year. Dylan Riley, the do head there. You've got a little bit of more wiggle room there as far as maybe you can risk some potential injury. You got two Power Four transfers coming over from Pitt, so you got oh shit, I'm gonna mess up their names here. But you got a transfer coming over from Kansas, and then you got a transfer coming over from Pitt as well. So two of those guys gonna be a pretty deep running back room. Dylan Riley, I think you talk about that being kind of the one unit that maybe fell off last year. I feel like Boise State has identified that, and if they're wanting a way to provide that explosive option, especially for an offense that who knows exactly what it's going to look like with a little bit of a newer flow with the wide receivers out there. This is a unit that I think needs to step up in a big way to be explosive. However, having said that, you talked about it already. Kick return, punt return, changing the game a little bit. It's not the punt return, kick return game of 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Do you think that punt returning, kick returning still has a major impact on the game of college football?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if here in the next 5 years that college ends up going to that same kickoff rule as the
Mm.
NFL has. Um, I hope it doesn't. Just traditional football. I like seeing the normal kick return stuff. But the game's changing, and there's nothing you can really do about it. It's it's pretty pointless to just line up out there and have the kickers kick it through the end zone. So,
Yeah.
or some teams, they don't even return it. Like Air Force, I don't even remember the last time that they've returned a kick. That's been their
Mm.
thing. They call a fair catch regardless, because if you call a fair catch, you get it out to the 25.
Yep.
So it's things like that. That's like, if you really want to push this still being in the game, you're going to have to make a change.
Mm.
And then punt returning, yeah, it's tough. It's tough just with these punters, especially with the Aussie style they roll out now, gives them their gunners chances to get down the field a little bit more. Um, and this, so my return against Penn State, I
Yeah.
wasn't even supposed to return it.
Oh, really?
I was supposed to call a fair catch, um, because Coach Collins' thing is if we see the punt team line up in a coverage that we've never seen before in a formation that we've never seen,
Mm.
we automatically do a 3 call, and that means no return, no return, just fair catch it. We'll take the ball because
Interesting.
those
Okay.
guys are those guys are checking for fakes. They think something's up.
Mm.
So, so Penn State, I think they were motioning or shifting or something, but it was so stinking loud in that stadium, and I was just jacked up on energy. So I seen some stuff happening, and I was looking at Troy, and I kind of see him go back, but then they call it off, and then they do it again. I was like, you know what? Screw it. And then they punt the ball, and I see 3 guys untouched, but he kind of outkicked his coverage. I mean, if you rewatch the video, everyone just kind of lets their guys run by him, and they're almost starting to run off the field. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I only get this opportunity once or twice, so I'm gonna take it. And then I pretty much blacked out after that. But
Well, we didn't. And that was an amazing return. One of the highlights of the game for sure. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that before we talk about kicking and punting, before we kind of get towards the end of this video here. The Boise State philosophy when it comes to returns. I obviously kick returns, punt returns. Is the kick return basically like unless it's in the end zone, you're bringing it back, or is it there's kind of the more looking again at that coverage? Like what drives a decision, as much as you can say, what drives a decision for Boise State to like, hey, we're gonna do this and we think we can get to the 25 or greater?
yeah, I mean, it really just depends on the guy that you have back there, right? Like talking about Savon Scarver, that dude was bringing it out every single time. He didn't have a choice. You know, Coach Collins coached him, and it was like, I don't care if it's 9 yards deep in the end zone, you're taking it out. He was that
The
explosive.
old
So a
Quentin
lot of
Jones, I like that. I like that.
yeah, yeah, but he just depends on the guys that you have back there, and kind of depends on the week too. You know, every you're
Hmm.
gonna study film differently for every team and have different schemes every week. So, you know, if we're playing a team that their kickoff team isn't great, then you know, Coach Collins might say you can take it out if it's 5 yards in the end zone. Sometimes it's like, all right, we're gonna call a fair catch no matter what. So yeah, it just depends on the week and really depends on the guy that you have back there.
So as far as a punt returning side, which is obviously what you were doing,
Mhm.
is it always the coaches making that decision on, hey, whether you bring this ball back up or not? Or is there you have some wiggle room on the field to say, hey, I think this guy is certain distance from me. I've got blocker set. I'm going to try.
Mhm.
Where is that decision coming from for the Boise State side? Because you talked about Boise State kind of angling more towards fair catch versus return, but where's the gray
Mhm.
area for you as a returner to make that decision?
Yeah, so like I said, with if we see him in a different formation that we've never seen,
Yeah,
that should be an automatic fair catch call because you're not going to have any help because everyone's staying up to check for fake. And if you lose the ball, you're probably not going to ever return again. But
right.
no, I had Coach Miller would stand back there with me. Um, I'd watch film every week and kind of get an idea of where I needed to line up, 40 yards back, 45, 35 sometimes.
Mm,
Also depends on where it's at on the field. You know,
sure.
if they're getting close to the 50-yard line, it's like, okay, they're probably going to try to sky punt this.
Yeah.
Really low chance that I'm going to get a return here.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of wiggle room once you establish yourself for sure.
mm,
Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of it's we probably called a block call on punt return, probably 75 to 80% of the punts that I returned.
okay.
Um, and so that, like, yeah, you have a little bit of help on blocking, but a lot of the guys are going to block it.
Right.
So
Right.
there's going to be some free bodies running down the field, and I'm not going to have a lot of help.
Right.
So, and I think that's what we struggled with last year
Mm,
was like, if it's a block call, I'm just going to call a fair catch. It's like, well, if you can get even 5 yards, that's 5 yards.
Yeah.
You know, goal is always get at least 10, but if you can get anything, you should try to get there. At least that's was my mentality.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, a lot of it is on the coach, but you do have a little bit of wiggle room
Mm.
when you're back there.
Before we talk about kicking punch, just kind of wrap up this coverage conversation. You talked a little bit already about some of the other teams, the considerations you have as a returner when you're thinking about their philosophy. What's
Mhm.
Boise State's philosophy when it comes to kicking, or more specifically kicking, but I guess punting is in there as well? Is their goal just out the back of the end zone every single time, or is there a thought process of like, hey, let's try to trap this guy, get him short of the 25? Kind of where does Boise State lean as far as that philosophy goes?
Yeah, the main one is just boot it out of the back. I mean,
Okay,
that's the easiest way to go about it.
sure.
But no, I mean, we every single week, Coach Collins would scheme something up to where it was like a little sky kick, a little pooch kick to this guy. He looks like he can't really catch. We've seen him on film. He can't really catch. The sun's going to be right here at this time of the day, so maybe third quarter,
Mm,
try a little pooch kick, and it'll hopefully the ball will get in the sun, and maybe we get a chance to steal a possession there.
mm,
But yeah, mostly it's kick it out of the back, but there was always something schemed up every week.
okay. And finally, I guess because we're going to talk about Colton, not Colton, sorry about Oscar throwing that touchdown in the back end here, but trickeration, the funk as Boise State calls it. Does that factor into the special teams practice and philosophy at all? I know we didn't see much of it out of the offense last year, but does
Mhm.
Boise State work in a little bit of misdirection when it comes to its special teams?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said about the kicking, there was always something schemed up. Same thing with punting. Every week there was something schemed up, and if we got a certain look, and it was fourth and short, or just depending on that's where the analytics come into play, right?
Sure.
Going for it, not going for it, but yeah, every week there was something schemed up against every single team, and it was sometimes we'd roll it over, because there's only so many schemes and formations a punt
Yeah,
return team can do. So
sure.
you can kind of keep some things in your back pocket. But yeah, we definitely scheme something up every single week. And if we got the right opportunity to use it, then we would do it. But if not, then, we just learned it anyways.
Um, all right, man. Kicking and punting. So just to wrap up the video, we're just right towards the end here. Kicking, Boomer comes in, and Doyle, they both come in and they do a good job stepping into some huge shoes there, right? But now this is their chance to take that second year jump and try and recapture that fan base energy. I think it's one of those areas that really needs to step up. Again, towards the end of the back year of last year, Boomer did a better job stepping up, and I think there's been a lot of conversations from him about his confidence coming this year. You love to see. For me, I thought the biggest overall impact was Doyle. I think that he came in and played at a very high level, 56 punts with a 40 3.6 yard average there. I mean, he did a really strong job individually for his punting. 17 punts down inside the 20. He was also 2 of 2 passing for a touchdown as well. I thought he really stepped up into that role really, really well. Can we talk a little bit about how often do you guys practice that fire drill in special teams? Is that just like, hey, once at the end of practice? Because I mean, that was one of the most beautiful passes I've ever seen from a specialist in my life. Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about how much you guys practice those within the Boise State practice?
Yeah. So that kind of goes back to like almost little league, fire, fire, fire. That's so I think like anyone who's ever played football knows that drill. We would run it, every week just to be prepared for it, just to keep it fresh. But yeah, that's something that I think every football player probably knows that drill of those end guys going out for a pass on a drop snap.
Can you talk about, you've talked about a little bit about the game changing and as far as the punters putting a little bit of different spin. Something we've seen in the recent trend in college football is those Aussie punters. It seems every team's got one, right? That has become the norm in college football, almost replacing the traditional American punters in that place. But can you talk a little bit about the Aussie style? And as a punt returner, I'm sure you returned against some. How does that impact you as a punt returner? How does that change what you're looking at? And does it make it harder to return those kicks?
Yeah, it sucks. But, it does make it harder to return it. One of my best friends from Utah State, he was our punter, Stephen Constantly from Australia. So that's all that I ever knew in college football was catching Aussie kicks. Um, and he was really, really good. But yeah, there's the way that they can put spin on the ball, and then it's a unique situation, but um, I don't know. I'm pretty sure James knew it too, but he had this kick, and it was called the banana punt. And he would hold the ball out and he would like kick the side of it. And so it would spin like it was weird. It would
Like a
spin on its
boomerang.
side.
Like
Yes. And it looked like it would just take off. And then at the very last second, it would just die. And those punts were so hard to catch. And I knew it was coming when we ended up playing and when I was at Boise State. First one, I almost dropped it too, and he kicked it, the banana punt. But yeah, I mean, with that, it's not just a traditional, just, 2 or 3 steps, kick it. They're rolling out and they'll hold on to it as long as they aren't getting pressured. They'll
Yeah.
stand back there for 10 seconds if they can. But yeah, it makes it really, really hard. You got to kind of track it with them. And then a lot of that is just watching film as well, where
Mm,
they like to kick it, because um, I think it was Oregon or maybe Penn State. They ended up cross kicking me because I
mm.
was following with the punter, trying to get to where I think the ball is going to be at, and then they would kick it all the way across the field. It gives me no shot to return at all. Um, and then yeah, their sky kick, same thing. They'll stand back there for a long time, and then you're sitting there waiting, and there's 4 guys
Just stand there
standing
waiting
right
with you.
there saying some pretty bad things to you, trying to get you to drop the ball.
Well, I'm excited for this year. I think as far as the special teams goes, I think there's a lot of potential. I think, Doyle and Boomer set a good baseline yesterday, especially on the back end of the year. I think both of
Mhm.
those guys can continue to build and work on their brand and improve their capability. And especially what we saw out of Boomer. I mean, you kind of didn't mention it earlier because I skimmed past it, but his kicks when he was inside of the 40, he was 7 out of 7. And when he was 50 or greater, he was 3 out of 3. In 40 to 49 is where all of his misses came. One is he was 1 of 5. There's four misses right there in that 40 to 49 range. So, when I
Mhm.
see that, I think, okay, inside of the 40, it's kind of a gimme. You're not thinking about it that much, right? Outside of 50, you're like, hey, nobody's going to blame me if I miss this. I might as well put it all
Mhm.
in. 40 to 49, when I see kickers missing that, at least from my perspective, I'm thinking, okay, that's a little mind games going on right there, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not so far that I'm completely out of culpability here, but I got to focus, lock in a little bit more, and you kind of get in your own head. So
Mhm.
coming into senior year, I think it's his last year, 16th year, opportunity to make a final impact, and he's used to the stadium, he's used to the team. I think that is where we're going to see him shine. What are your thoughts on that before we kind of end this video?
Yeah, I think Coach Rasa is great with those guys. He's able to really build good relationships with those guys and build their trust. Um, and there's a standard there too, I mean, Jonah and James just leaving there, like there is something to uphold. And um, I think that's just part of the whole culture at Boise State, is like carrying on that legacy, that blue collar mentality. No one's better than us
Mm,
type thing. So I think this year it's going to be a really, really big improvement as far as the kicking game goes. And with the return game, I want to see some guys back there that want the ball in their hands and aren't afraid to catch the ball.
yeah, I 100% agree. And I love your thoughts about Tyler as well. He was the first ever person to do a video series with me. He kind of kicked off the
Uh,
whole thing. Yeah, like him saying yes to coming on that first time I did it in 2021, I think. It kind of like gave me confidence to ask other people. And so he's a great person.
mhm,
Blue collar all the way, but also just, that exactly what you expect out of Boise State player or former player when it comes to approachability and just personality overall. But fantastic coaching staff to work with there, especially when it comes to Rouse and what he's doing with the kicking game. Hopefully, you see that improvement. I think that there's room for Doyle to improve even after a good year last year. And then overall, like we said, like, there's some dogs on this return team who can
mhm,
step up, and the guys that have proven it in the past, and maybe they can step up in that role again. Final
mhm.
thoughts on the special teams or the team overall when you're looking at what happened last year and where they can go this year. What's your final perspective on the overall? You can throw out a record prediction if you want to, but overall perspective on the program as far as special teams and the team overall goes from last year coming into this one.
Yeah, yeah. kind of like what I said, just getting back to that mindset of like no one's better than us. You know, we don't lose here. We do not lose. It's not acceptable. I think Coach Danielson, he's one of the best coaches that I've ever had, but he's also one of the greatest people that I've ever met in my life. He helped grow my faith so much, and that was very, very important to me. He truly cares about his players. You know, there's a lot of coaches in this business that don't. You know, they love the game, but it's hard to balance. It's a hard job, but he makes it known that he really cares about us and his players and his staff too. So I think that they have, you know, Coach Danielson, he's the guy for Boise State for a long time. Um, but I think getting to that mindset, you know, of what truly built Boise State is that team mentality. And, you know, it doesn't matter how many stars you were in high school, you know, you're a Bronco now. So it's time to get to that mentality and don't let that slip at all.
Absolutely agree. And great final closing thoughts. Well, thank you so much, Cooper, for coming on, man. This was awesome. Great conversation about the Boise State recent past there and a unique moment in the sport. Hopefully, not too unique. Hopefully, we get some other opportunities to go out and do similar things here in the near future. But for Boise State, looking back at last year, I think there's questions across this program, especially when it comes to the defense, offensive side. But I think special teams, there's a lot of signs of hope there, I think, especially when you look at how the unit finished the year. So hopefully fans can kind of dig into that and take some faith out of that and some belief, Bronco Believer channel, right? Take some belief in the future of this program out of what we saw in the back end. And I think special teams is going to surprise some people this year. I think that they're going to do some good things, especially getting those return numbers back up. So thanks so much for coming on, man. This has been awesome. Everybody, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Again, as we went throughout this whole video, what your thoughts are on this unit as a whole, your own memories from Cooper's time in the 2024 season, whatever you want to share. I make a big point of going in and replying to every person on my videos. And of course, look forward to those offensive and defensive previews coming out soon. We'll be shooting those videos this month. So please let me know again your thoughts. Thanks everybody for watching all at the end. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, and go Big Blue!